Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his stout and robust defense of the need to raise GST. I have three clarification questions with regard to three separate areas. The first has to do with corporate taxation, and the question is whether the government plans to subscribe to the spirit of the BEPS agreement as a signatory and to roll out, broadly speaking, the framework as prescribed. And I mention this in part because the Workers' Party's proposal for corporate taxation is quite different from the hypothetical.
If we can just keep it to largely clarifications, like
sure.
I'll allow some preamble, but not another speech again.
Fair enough. That was my first question. My second question has to do with wealth taxation. And the question is whether the Minister believes that the modest increase in wealth taxation that is set forth in our proposal, which is broadly consistent with, in fact, it significantly is lower than some other neutral analysts have had. Our estimate is 1.2 billion. Whether he thinks that this modest increase in wealth taxation will be such that it's will make Singapore so unattractive that high net worth individuals would relocate and be footloose in that sense. My third question has to do with land sales, and I accept the position that this government has that they treat land sales as part of reserves. But then I'm wondering if he is able to reconcile the treatment of land sales that is less than 10 years, so land leases that are of 1 to 9 years, with the broad argument that land sales must all immediately go into reserves rather than take the first 9 years as part of recurrent revenue. Thank you.
Sir, on the three questions, first on the BEPS 2.0, we are certainly committed to implementing the spirit of BEPS 2.0. We will do so while ensuring that this is indeed implemented around the world, because our bigger concern is that it must be a level playing field. It cannot be that some countries do it and others don't, and then there are leakages, revenue leakages, that will undermine Singapore. So we are watching. Yes, countries have signed up to it, but countries have to go through their own domestic processes to roll out BEPS 2.0. It's not a certainty that this will get through their respective parliaments. So signing the declaration is one thing, 2023, but will it get through all the countries' parliaments, legislations, and implemented in law? Not so sure yet. So we do want to make sure that there is a level playing field, and we will do our part as a signatory, as a responsible member of the international community, to likewise implement when there is that global consensus and global implementation. On wealth taxes, I recognize a proposal from Associate Professor Lim and the Workers' Party for a net wealth tax that will yield revenue of $1.2 billion. I have explained that it is, yes, in theory, you could design a scheme like that. You could. But in practice, it will be much more complicated. And it's not just about the fears of people leaving, but the fact that there are so many ways for high net worth individuals to circumvent whatever taxation rules you have in place and to plan away the burden of the wealth tax on themselves. The ones who do are usually the ones with better means, higher wealth. And this is why even in Switzerland, for example, if you look at the net wealth tax they have there, the burden of tax falls on a much broader base of the population. The so-called net wealth tax in Switzerland, it's not a wealth tax for the top end only. Many middle class, many middle income people pay for that net wealth tax. This was our experience in estate duty, mind you, as I mentioned. The The top end, the very wealthy, knew how to plan it away, but the burden ended up falling on the middle income and the upper middle income. That's our bigger concern. And that's why, on top of the concern that, yes, there will be some competitiveness reasons, that's also a relevant concern. And that's why we have to study this very carefully. We have to think through, look at the experiences of other jurisdictions. Not very many left to study because, as I said, many of them have dropped the idea of doing a net wealth tax, and we will have to consider what is suitable for Singapore. So we will not rule it out, but at this stage, we do not have something that we are confident can be effectively implemented, suited to Singapore's circumstances. On land sales, the easy answer is for these shorter duration leases, we've decided for flexibility, and because there are more transactions like that, there is no need to regard them as assets, and therefore we take them in as current revenue. But for the ones with longer leases, we treat them as assets, and then therefore we take them into our reserves framework and accord the treatment accordingly. It's a judgment call. We could have said everything, regardless of the duration of the lease, but we have worked out what we think is a reasonable balance, and that has been decided and agreed with the President's office.